Okay. We had a great time, as you could see. We got to do some ministry that some of these kids have never done before. We went on some prayer walks. We went and had conversations with the homeless, prayed with some people. It was really, really, really a great trip. We fit 100 people into the church that we were staying in. It was 5 different churches came and stayed with us. And what I'm going to do is just give each person just a chance to sort of share their favorite memory from the trip or something that they felt God really spoke to them about. For me, it was at one point we were going on a prayer walk and we broke the kids up into groups of 3. And Andrew was in my group and a couple other folks. And we were just sort of walking for a while and then praying and asking God to do different things. And so at one point we were walking along and we stopped and one of the guys prayed, all right, Lord, I just ask that you would, bring peace to this community because there's a lot of violence there. And then for about the next 3 or 4 minutes, no cars walked by, no people came by. It was like completely silent. It was like a Disney movie or something. A little bird came and sat in front of us and tweeted at us and flew away. And the wind was like blowing a leaf. And no kids talked for 5 minutes. It was amazing. And so I sort of turned to the other kids that were with me, and I was like, am I crazy, or is this super peaceful? And they were like, yeah. And I said, did you see how quick God can answer prayer sometimes? We had just prayed that God would make it peaceful in this neighborhood, and God gave us a piece of that right away. So for me, that was really special because it's a miracle that we were quiet for that long and that we got to see that. So Samantha's going to talk to us a little bit about this piece of art that we have. It's going to be up here for y'all later after the service if you want to look at it more in detail.
So on the last night, we had to do a mosaic, which consisted of different things we had done during the trip and what really touched our hearts. And so we had different people in the group who are very talented in different parts of art. And so we had Andrew do like the actual buildings and everything, and Lauren and some of the other ones, Emily, and everybody, they got to color it. And then because we are in Atlanta and it is a very art-centered district, everything is covered in graffiti. So we did that on our actual poster. And so this is the church we actually stayed at, Blueprint Church. And then you have the MLK National Historic Site, which we went to visited, along with the church he actually preached at, called Ebenezer Church. You have Krog Street Market, which is a market we went to one day, and it is one of the best places I've ever been. They have amazing food. And it was just really cool to go and see all of the different places that just go into the building and make it all very different. You have Safe House, which is one of the places we visited near the end of our trip. And so Safe House Outreach they serve food and they can help people get jobs and get in touch with their families and get their papers or their license and all of that. One day we also helped at a Chick-fil-A camp that was a sports camp for FCA. And it was amazing to see the little kids, and there was a great speaker there who talked about his past experience and everything he's done. And we have the prayer walk, which we did, which was a lot of fun, and we got to see different parts of around the church, and you can see the diversity that is around the church, because like you'd see on one side of the street, it'd be very new houses that are wood and glass and metal and everything, and on the other side of the street, you'd have broken down parks, or you'd have houses that were falling apart and the paint was peeling, and they'd just have holes everywhere. Or you'd even see them next to each other. One of the houses we saw, it was very new. It was probably very expensive to live there. It was an apartment, and right next to it, you had a house on stilts that was falling apart. And so we prayed, and it was really amazing to see all the different things that happened. One day we went and we got ice cream because it was right down the road, so we just walked there. And as we were walking, this group of like 10 little kids, who none of them were probably over the age of 8, stopped. And they all came and hugged us. And we stood there for like 5 minutes getting hugs from this group of kids we had never met before. We had no idea who they were. They just stopped and started giving us all hugs. And it was amazing. And it was so much fun to see. And so each of these places are covered in different graffiti. So it's all about what we did there and the different things we saw and we did and we ate. And then on the middle of the street, we have each signed our names, which if you come and look at it, you will see this road is covered. Everyone signed their own name. And it's really cool, and I'm so proud of how well it turned out. And so, yeah. Come on, Trish. Look.
Good morning, all. I'm Loretta, and I was just so blessed to be allowed to go on this trip with this group of kids and get to know them a little better. And a little later, I might share a funny story with y'all, but I don't know that right now is the time to do it. But we had a lot of fun, lots of jokes throughout the thing. The ice cream trip, that was all my fault. I did it. But I learned my lesson, and it's all good.
Okay, good morning. I'm Lauren, if anybody didn't know. My favorite part, or my most memorable part about the trip was visiting the Safe House. And when I got there, I thought we were just going to be serving food to the homeless people, but no, we had a lady named Miss Victoria, and she was like, okay, we're going to go out and talk to the homeless people. And me being shy, I was like, oh God, this is going to be awkward. So then we get there and we're talking to the homeless people, and it was just really cool to see, like, learn their background story. And it was like they're real people, and we just kind of ignore them, but we like never stop to ask, like, hi, how's your day, or anything, because that's just what they need, just like a conversation once in a while. So some of them weren't there because they lost their job or anything. Some people, like, there was one man who lost his papers, and he was like from South Africa or something, and he was Sudan. He was like a traveler sort of, and he was visiting Atlanta, and he just lost his papers, and he can't go back home now. So it's not like these people were doing drugs or anything. Some of them were, but like it was just cool to learn about their past and their experiences. But we had no fear because Trish Pretty was there, so so it wasn't as awkward as it was. So.
Hi, I'm Darian. One of the best things for me about going on the trip was that I got to grow closer to God and closer to everybody in our group, and I'm really grateful for that. It's just amazing to be so close to so many people that believe the same things that you do, and it's just really great. So thank you all. Hi everybody, I'm Sarah. Why did you cry? Okay.
Good morning. My name's Emily. I'd like to thank anybody who donated the money to the fundraiser who made this trip happen. And without you or your prayers, we wouldn't have been able to share the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Hi, my name is Julia, and my favorite part of the trip was also meeting the homeless people. It's just really neat just to get to know their story and their background. Kind of like what Lauren said. That was my favorite part, and also I really liked the Chick-fil-A cam and hearing one of the speakers who was on the NFL team. And he always had faith in God. No matter what he did, he always had faith in him, and that was really nice to hear.
I think my favorite part was the Safe House as well. It certainly got us out of our comfort zone because we were all very kind of scared to go and talk to homeless people. We were uncomfortable, and we didn't want to make them uncomfortable. But one of the things that the lady, Victoria, who was kind of our little guide on this, she said, if you go in with the attitude that you're here and the homeless person is here, she said, you have the wrong attitude. She said, you need to come here. You need to humble yourself, lower yourself, and then bring yourself up to the homeless person. And that's pretty much what she did, and we watched her do that. She knew their names. She knew pretty much, he always sits over here, and she went and just said, are you going to come to lunch today? And so she made it easy. She said, shake their hand. Ask them their name. It was very simple. I was surprised at how easy it was. And this one man was sitting there in a little fold-out chair, and he was reading the newspaper. And it never struck me that a homeless person would read the newspaper. And when she told him, she said, they're from Louisiana. He said, oh, you're Saints fans. And we laughed, and he said, I tell you what, he said, the LSU Tigers are about the only team that can beat Alabama. Again, I was surprised that a homeless person in Atlanta, Georgia, would be rooting for the LSU Tigers. So one man in the park, he had on this Hawaiian shirt, and I didn't know what else to say to him, so I complimented his shirt. And he went through the whole regiment of what he did to take care of his shirt. He lives on the streets. He had a regiment, how he folded, because he had a little wrinkle right here on his sleeve, and that seemed to bother him. And then he told me that he kept his nails clean, and he told me about that, and he said he did all of that because it was how his mama raised him. And he also had some rubbing alcohol, and he told us, he went through about the mosquitoes are bad this time of the year. He said, so I use this specific alcohol because it's best for those bug bites, and he went on about that. And so it was just such an eye-opener to me to see how they live every day. And so they impacted us more than we impacted them.
Well, I had a lot of memories coming out of this trip. Probably the prayer walks were probably my most favorite part of the trips. Going down the street, talking to a homeless person, anybody, just praying for them. It was a spiritually touching moment for all of us in those groups. Probably the most spiritually relieving part for me of the trip was on this prayer walk. After meeting with the Safe House Outreach, Brother Josh, he was praying for a man. We were in a circle, in a group. And while I was focused on the prayer, a person pulled me aside. He was a homeless man I've seen on the street before. He pulled me aside and asked me to pray for him. So I did. I prayed that he would have a place to sleep, food to eat, and that he was a child of God like every one of us. And I prayed that he would have a really bright future ahead of him. And it was such a big moment for me because that entire trip, I was hoping I would have an impact on someone, anybody. And so after I prayed for him and he left me with my group, I just couldn't hold back my tears.
All right, well, I'm Tristan. I've been here like once or twice. Some people might know me. But my favorite part about the trip was actually the Chick-fil-A Foundation. There was this one lady who was kind of head over all of it. And the thing that stuck out to me was that she had both of her arms, well, her hands more like it, they were in casts because, was it the week or was it the summer before? The week before, she was playing tug of war with a bunch of kids, and she had wrapped her arms in the rope. And all of her teammates let go at one point, and it was just her against some like a group of other kids. And what happened was all those bones in her arm and her hand broke. And what just really kind of stood out to me was that she was able to serve God even though she had practically no use of her hands, no fine-tuned motion. But she was still in it to serve her God and just not be hindered by it. She even had her daughter come running behind her with her fanny pack with all her supplies. So her daughter was her hands, and that was kind of just, it kind of had like a moral lesson to me that even though she will heal, I'm kind of in the same boat because my hands are also not, one of my hands aren't to the fullest they could be, but I can still probably do as much as I can, as much as she could do, which was a lot, and have the same impact that she had. And that's kind of just what I wanted to say. And also, thank you all for contributing to the funds for this trip, even though without it, some people might not have been able to go, and just a little bit of help helped each of these people a lot, even me. And right next to me, I have a person we picked up in Atlanta. I don't know her name. But,
Hi, everybody. I'm so glad to be here for the first time ever. This is a wonderful city I've been enjoying. My name is Trish Pretty. These guys picked me up in Atlanta, and we really had a lot of fun together. I think one of my favorite memories was defrosting a freezer. Who's had that opportunity lately? I think I had the coolest job. Truthfully, that was a very therapeutic thing for me to do. Y'all are all laughing, but this was seriously the best part of my trip. Trish Pretty was a really cool person, and I enjoyed playing her role this week. If you ask me later, I might explain to you how she came to be, but I went on this trip thinking I was going to be there for the kids, and I really think they were there for me more. They really got to me, just listening to their stories and how they interacted with these people that they met. And this is really a good group of kids, guys. They really are.
Hello, everyone. Well, my name's Quentin. I'm pretty sure I spoke to y'all before about our Tennessee trip. And from my best experience was when we were with Safe House and we went on, it seemed just like a prayer walk, except we were also inviting people to lunch over there. Well, one person whose story really caught my attention, who I was really interested in, was a man named Isaac. He was from Eastern Africa. And then he kind of explained how it was growing up he told us how when he was a little boy, how he mostly actually grew up in the jungle. But then as he moved on in life from the country somewhere in Eastern Africa where he grew up, there was mostly just a war, murder and rape going on there. And then he even said, like, when all this was going on, where was God? And then he felt like there was no God there. So even Jason was trying to probably explain to him that it's not God who made that wrong. It's just people are different, and that sometimes people can be stupid because they're all made different. So that's what led to that. And then he was kind of shaking his head like, no, like I'm pretty sure what he was feeling like was if there's a God as powerful as ours, then why would he allow a whole country be treated like that? So what he ended up doing, I think it was he traveled to America, going to all kinds of different states. I think he went to Florida, I know he went to Alaska even. And then I think what was happening was he was looking for peace. He's looking for a place of peace where he can enjoy life. And then he ended up in Atlanta, and he lost his immigration papers. So from there, he was already stuck in Atlanta. So just hearing this story and hearing how all he was trying to do was just find a place of peace so he can enjoy his life, maybe enjoy his life with his family, because he also had a family that is stuck in Africa right now. A wife, and I don't remember the specifics. I know he has 2 kids. I don't know if it's 2 daughters or 2 sons or one of each. But he had a family, and that was all he had, and he lost them. Now he is separated from them in Atlanta all alone with barely anything. I think all he had was just maybe a book sack with some clothes in it and a Walmart bag with a couple of waters, maybe even something to eat. And just listening to that and seeing how this person traveled across an ocean from where he originally lived to try and find a place of peace. Wasn't even worried about praying to a God or whatever. All he wished in life was to have peace, or wish the world was at peace, trying to find a place that can make him feel like life was worth living for. And he ended up stuck in what he feels like is a total hellhole. And that really touched me. So whenever the option to pray for him came up, of course I wanted to pray for him. So of course, and I was really nervous because I did not want to mess up. I wanted to show him that I was serious, and I honestly hope that God connects to him in a way. So I started praying for him. I was like, shine your light above him, show him that you are here listening. And whenever I said listen, I'm telling you, like in 1 second, I accidentally stuttered and said listen like 3 times. And I even paused my prayer for a second. I was just like, I'm sorry, Isaac. I didn't mean to stutter. And what amazed me was he didn't like lift up his head and said like, I'm sorry, whatever. He continued to bow his head and listen to me saying his prayer. And that kind of touched me. I felt like he was respecting me in a way, listening, as if he was seeing if God will connect with him or not. So I continued the prayer. I'm just like, I hope that you bless him and that you show him that he can probably have his family again, or maybe he can even have this place of peace that he wishes for with his family. And then I even stopped and I thought for a second, and then immediately just this came up to me. I started getting a real good feeling about this, and I was like, maybe you can show him that maybe here on earth isn't what he is looking for. So maybe he will not find his place of peace, but maybe in heaven he will. And I said, show him that whenever he follows you, that whenever it's his time and he goes to heaven, that he may have his place of peace, and he may be with not just with his family, but with an even bigger family of God. And that may he have eternal life and just be blessed and loved by Jesus. And then I ended the prayer there, and then what surprised me was he wasn't just still sad and kind of exhausted. He was happy. He was smiling, and he was constantly saying, thank you, I wish you good luck, and I hope that this trip goes well for y'all. And I was just telling him, thank you for sharing your story. And I even, after we got back from the trip, I prayed for him again, and I'm just hoping that something in that moment, God did something. I can tell that he did something at that moment, but I hope he continues to work through his life, and I really hope for the best of things that he finds his family or sees them again, because that's all he had left, and people shouldn't be separated from their families like that. All right, now I'm going to pass the mic to Sheldon.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sheldon. And they mentioned Krog Street earlier. That was maybe one of my favorite places that I've been because I love to eat. From Louisiana, who doesn't love to eat? But some of my most touching things that I've done is we went on a prayer walk, and within a few seconds, we decided to stop by this playground where children were playing, and they had a ball that they were playing with. And when we stopped to pray, I had the opportunity to keep the ball from going into the street that was right behind us because there was a child probably going to go chase after the ball in the highway. So I just went out the way and just tossed it back to him before it went to the highway and could have caused traffic commotion or hurt the child as well. But my other favorite opportunity was talking to this homeless man who was coming from Florida, and he has no place there. He can't really get food there because he just got there like a day or so before us. Yeah. And seeing some of these homeless people, it made me realize that not all of them, it wasn't their fault that they are very educated, like gone through college, and they were interested in the newspaper. And seeing that, I was taken away by a wonderful opportunity to go on this trip, and I want to thank all of you for contributing to help us go on this trip.
One last thing I wanted to share was sort of like the last night we were there, we kind of had this little debrief, we called them, and they would sort of share what God had been doing in their lives. And after we prayed, one of the kids, he just said, man, I need to tell y'all that this has been an amazing trip for me. And he just like broke down. One of our guys, he started crying. And it was amazing because as soon as we ended the meeting, it was like immediately there was like 5 or 6 people around him, hugging him and everything. And that was one of the pictures you saw there at the end of our slideshow. It was these kids showing already what they had learned from the trip, that when somebody is suffering, that God has placed us there to be an encouragement and to love on them. And so everybody that supported us financially or through prayers, we just want to say thank you because God really did a work. Jason and I knew God was going to do a work because the week before was crazy. And every time it gets crazy before you go, you're like, okay, this is a spiritual attack. Something is about to happen. And God worked in each and every person's life, I mean, including us. These trips are good for your prayer life if you're a leader, I'll tell you that much. But we just wanted to say thank you again, and especially for just the opportunity to witness and everything. So, no.
Well, thank you all for sharing, and I really appreciate it. So there's not much more I can add to that, but I just want to take a few minutes and share some principles for our church too, because every time we go away and go somewhere, my prayer is not just it stays in Atlanta, and my prayer doesn't just come back and encourage the youth. Am I loud enough? It doesn't sound loud. Can y'all hear me? Okay, very good. I haven't preached in a week. I don't know what it's like. But it's my prayer not for just to stay in the youth. My prayer is for it to spill over into our church. And for us to have the same passion, to have the same excitement that they had. And so I want to share some principles about our trip and from God's Word. So if you want to turn with me to Acts chapter 3. This passage came up several times in our trip, and I prayed about it, and I want to share it from this. But the youth did such a great job sharing, so thank y'all for sharing your heart. But I want to thank you as a church for supporting us. Many of you gave financially well above and beyond, and many of you were praying for us. And I thank Josh for taking us. Several times I'm like, before we went, okay, Josh, why are you dragging me along? Why are you taking us all the way to Atlanta on this trip? When we got there, I'm like, brother, why are we here, right? And it's not an easy trip, especially right after Bible school. We turn around and we load up some vans and we go driving. Not something I wake up and want to do every morning. But I'm glad we got to go. I'm thankful for Sharon and Loretta for going. Josh and I may not have really had a choice in the matter, but y'all chose to go. And so thank you for your sacrifice and for going and taking time out. And so we're so glad you could go because we needed you. So let's just read the passage, and I want to share a few things, and then we'll be dismissed. So in Acts chapter 3, in verse 1, it says, Peter and John were going to the temple at the 9th hour, the hour of prayer. And a man who had been lame from his mother's womb was being carried along when they used to sit down every day at the gate of the temple, which is called Beautiful, in order to beg alms or money of those who were entering the temple. And when he saw Peter and John about to go into the temple, he began asking to receive alms. But Peter, along with John, fixed his gaze on him and said, Look at us. And he began to give them his attention, expecting to receive something from them. But Peter said, I do not possess silver and gold, but what I do have to you, in the name of the Lord Jesus, the Nazarene, walk. And seizing him by the right hand, he raised him up, and immediately his feet and ankles were strengthened. And with a leap he stood upright and began to walk, and he in the temple with him, walking and leaping and praising God. And all the people saw him walking and praising God, and they were taking note of him as being the one who used to sit at the beautiful gate of the temple to beg alms. And they were filled with wonder and amazement at what happened to him. Let's pray. Lord, I thank you for the youth. Thank you for their hearts. Thank you for the adults. And thank you for this church, Lord. And let us learn from this trip and from this passage, Lord, what you'd have us to do and to be. In Christ's name, amen. Well, this is my takeaway from the trip. This is the point of what we did and the message and everything is that we're not just to come to church, we're to go be the church, okay? And so that's what I was reminded of, and that's what we need to remember. We're not just to come to church, we're to go and be the church, okay? And so that's what we were last week. We're being the church, living out Christ. And from our passage and from this week, I want to share 3 things quickly about how we're to be the church and continue this on in New Roads and Venturous and Oscar beyond just Atlanta. So first thing is we need to see those around us who need Jesus. We need to see those around us who need Jesus. Notice in verse 1, Peter and John were going to the temple the 9th hour to pray, and there was a man that was lame there begging for money. He saw Peter and John as they were going to the temple, and he begged for money, and Peter, along with John, fixed his gaze on him, and he said, Look at us. So they're on the way to the temple. There's a lame man. He was born that way, and so They didn't have a lot of resources back then. Even there's not a lot of resources around to help people out. And so he had to beg for money. Now, one of the best places to beg for money was at the temple outside. Why? Well, for one, there's a lot of people out there. And two, if people are going to the temple, they're in the mindset of God and praying, and they want to help out people. But also as a place where religious leaders would go and show off how great and awesome they were. And so if they saw someone begging outside, they would say, this is an opportunity for me to show how awesome I am. And so they would give money. So if you had to beg for money, this would want to be the main places to go and ask for money. And Peter and John take notice of this man. And he had probably been used to not being noticed, been overlooked. He didn't look like everyone else. He just had a rough time, a rough life. But they took notice and looked at him. Now, have you ever seen people that you didn't want to look at? You ever been there, to be honest? You didn't want to make eye contact? We've all been there, right? You're in Baton Rouge, and you're at the corner of City Place and College, and there's a homeless person there with a sign. Do you roll down your window and engage with them usually, or what do we normally do? We make sure the doors are locked. We don't make eye contact. Or if you're in another place of Baton Rouge and you see someone that's homeless or someone not like you and you don't know how to respond, so you kind of don't make eye contact with them, right? And when we got to Atlanta, there's homeless everywhere. One of the first days after we got there, we went to IHOP and ate. And outside there was a homeless man asking for help, asking for money, somewhere to stay. And then when we left and walked outside, there was another different person. And so we went to get ice cream. And there were people walking in the restaurant wanting help. Everywhere you went, there were people there needing help. And one of my favorite things we did, and several of the youth mentioned it, was we went and interacted with the homeless people. And as Quentin mentioned, we interacted with Isaac from East Africa. Just a sweet spirit of a man. I try to share with him a little bit of the gospel the best I could in that situation, but these are people that we normally don't take notice of. These are people that we normally overlook, or we avoid, or we just pretend like they're not there, right? But this man in our passage, he was forever changed. Why? Because Peter and John took time to do what? To look at them, to make notice of them, right? And it's a reminder for us that as a church, we're to do the same. We're to take notice of people. There are people all around us who need help. They might not be calling out begging for help. You may not can tell from looking on the outside. They might not be lame. They might not be homeless, but they need help. Help with their lives and help with discouragement and depression and loneliness and hopelessness. It's good we go to Atlanta. It's good we go to Belarus. It's good we go to mission trips, but guess where our primarily focus should be? At home. When you walk outside those doors, you are entering the mission field. And so I'm asking us as a church, are we looking around and noticing people who need Jesus? And so we need to engage these people and pray, Lord, show me who needs you today. So we need to open our eyes. But secondly, not only do we need to see those around us who need Jesus, we need to step outside of our comfort zones, okay? And this trip was one big outside the comfort zone. Josh mentioned it was 100 people in one church. He failed to mention one item, that all the guys of the trip, I don't know, there's about 50 of us up there, the balcony was not like ours. It went around the church like that. We were all crammed in the balcony upstairs. And so we're all packed, no privacy. You didn't have time to be alone at all. So it was a really rough trip. There were 4 showers for like 100 people, okay? And so that wasn't always ideal. And just seemed like every time you would get into the groove and sort of, okay, this trip's going great, I can handle it, something else would happen and disrupt you and throw you off. And so we were always didn't know what was going on, and it was not an easy trip. It was a great trip. And for me, the last 3 days or so, I had a physical ailment, and so I felt awful. But God gave us the strength to get through, right? So we did uncomfortable things, but guess what? I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was a time of great joy. And it's a reminder that our greatest joys are usually in when we're out of our comfort zone, we're serving the Lord. And so for us, we have to get out of our comfort zone. And notice in our verse 1, where are Peter and John going at the time? Where are they going? To the temple to pray. It's the 9th hour. That's That's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's part of their routine. It was part of their schedule. And if you remember in chapter 2, it says in verse 42, they were continually devoting themselves to apostles' teaching, to fellowship, to breaking of bread, and to prayer. And they had a sense of awe and wonder in selling their property. And it says, day by day, continuing with one mind in the temple, breaking bread from house to house. They were taking their meals together with gladness and sincerity of heart. So the early church had a routine, right? They had a schedule. Every day they would get together and break bread and go and pray and go and fellowship. They had a routine that they did. Now, Peter and John, their routine was disrupted, right? They were thrown out of their comfort zone, one, because it was time for them to go and pray. They could have just easily ignored that man and went and prayed. And I often wonder if there was someone outside our church who needed help, would we just ignore them and come in because it's time to worship? But they had their schedule. But they had to leave that. They had to leave that routine. Not only that, they got out of their comfort zone and interacted with a man who probably didn't smell good, didn't look good, looked like a homeless person, might have been homeless. And they got out of their comfort zone. And for us, it's a reminder to make a difference, we have to get out of our comfort zone. And we don't like that. On Wednesday night, the church had Bible study, and they split the ladies from the guys, and so all the guys were downstairs. And we talked about idols. And there were 4 main idols that cover everything that we deal with. And the idols are power, control, comfort, and approval. And so we all shared what idol was. We all deal with all these idols, but probably my main idol is comfort. I like comfort. I don't like to be thrown out of my schedule. I don't like to be disrupted. And that's what's so hard about the trip. It's a constant disruption. But you know, sometimes God disrupts our schedule because He wants to do a great work, right? Sometimes the only way God can work in our lives is when our schedules are disrupted, when we are out of our comfort zone, when we're out of that routine and we're not from that normal 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or whatever your schedule is for life. And so I wonder, are we allowing God to get us out of our comfort zone? You know, for our church, our comfort zone is our bulletin, right? In other words, it's a schedule. We have Bible study at this time. We have church at this time. We got to be out. We should be out right now, so some of you are uncomfortable, right? We got to be uncomfortable. You're laughing because you're like, I hope he doesn't know it's me, okay? Are we out of our comfort zone? Maybe God is disrupting your routine and comfort zone to teach you something, to show you something, to do a work in your life. But we got to be out of the comfort zone. The event we're having in July, it's a great time to get out of your comfort zone. Say, well, I don't know how to talk with somebody in the community. Well, come. I don't know how to work with kids. Well, come and do that. We need to go maybe prayer walk in the neighborhood. I thought even preparing for this, maybe one Sunday, go, instead of having church here, go have a church in the park and invite people from the community. Come. Get out of our comfort zone, right? And so that's what we have to do. We got to see those around us who need Jesus. We need to step out of our comfort zone. And the last thing, which makes you more comfortable, right? The last thing. So we got to share the good news. We got to share the gospel. We got to share the gospel. One thing we did was go to the Coca-Cola world, and everybody likes Coke. We love Coke, right? How many of you don't like Coke? Okay, that's good. That's fine. Okay, is it Diet Coke? Is that you don't drink it all? All right. Well, most people like Coke, right? You go all around the world. I've been to Belarus. They have Coke. They have Sprite. Then in Mexico, they have Coke. They have Coca Light, which is Diet Coke. You go anywhere in the world, they may not have electricity, but they got Coke, right? And one of the promotions or whatever, share a Coke. Share a Coke with this person. Well, we shouldn't be so much worried about sharing a Coke. We should share Jesus because He's far better than Coke, right? We got to share the good news. Now, if you notice on in our passage, in verse 5, He expects something from them. And Peter says, I don't possess silver and gold, but what I do have, in the name of Jesus, the Nazarene, walk. And we see what happens. The man walks, he's healed. Now, they pointed him to Christ. Now, I'm not saying we're to go out and find people who are lame and heal them, okay? But we can point people to the good news of Christ. And just like this man found his legs, he found joy, he found a freshness, he found hope. People are spiritually lost. We can point them to Christ, and they can have spiritual life. They can find their spiritual legs, if you will, and walk with God and get to know Him. But we've got to get out and share the gospel. And Jesus is still in the business of changing lives. Do you believe that? Okay, 2 of you believe it. 3. All right. Amen. One thing I loved about the church, and Josh showed it on the video, probably couldn't notice it was a sign. It was really their focus. It says, the gospel changes people and people change the world. And when we first got there, Justin, a great young man who was over everything, his first little session or study he gave us, he said the gospel moves us towards people, right? John and Peter was moved towards this man because of the gospel. Are we moved towards people? You know, we can't wait to share good news, right? Brother Roger and Miss Carol, they had a new grandchild last week. So during our trip, he sent me a picture. And so I texted him and I contacted him later on. You have a new grandbaby, you can't wait to share that, right? You find a good place to eat, you can't wait to share that. You find a great doctor and it helps, you can't wait to share that, right? We should be even more excited to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. And a great reminder I heard last week, it's not just good news for us, it's good news for others. Now, how many of you been to Coke World? Anybody been there in Atlanta? Well, second, I think only like 20-something years ago. But now they have this big deal. It's a secret vault. It's a real vault where they have the secret formula. And they let you go in. It's a big ordeal. You don't get to see inside the vault. You don't get to see the formula. But they show a video 360 around. It's this big old hootenanny thing to see a closed bank vault, okay? But I'll never forget what happened because the narrator of that was Howard Sutherland, right? Kiefer Sutherland's dad. And he's narrating in his great narration voice. And he says one thing I'll never forget. He said, talking about the Coke, he said, keeping the secret ensures the magic lives on. And I thought about that. You know, sometimes we treat the gospel like that, right? Like we have to keep the secret. But it's the exact opposite. We can't keep the secret of the good news of Christ. We have to go and share that. That's how the magic, if you will, lives on. That's how our lives are changed if we share the gospel. And one of the great things I loved about this trip was the simple things we did. And everything was tied to the gospel. For instance, we interacted with the homeless people. We prayed with them, and it was to give them hope about the gospel. You saw a picture of one of the cards, and Lauren made that. They made cards and to write encouragement to prostitutes and just to point them to Christ, that they're valued, that they're loved. We prayer walked around the community. The gospel would change lives. We did a lot of things with Martin Luther King Jr., his church, and a center to see how the gospel affected how we treat one another and civil rights. And what I loved about this was that it didn't take any resources to go prayer walking. How many of you have legs? All right, some of you don't. Okay. You go out and prayer walk. You don't need some big, 12-week study on how to go prayer walking. We don't have to have all this stuff to break cards to people or things we do. It's just so simple. We can just go do that. We have to be intentional. Just like in July. We're not going to do anything elaborate, right? Sometimes in church we think we got to have all these large programs and all these organized, and we got to get organized, but look, we're just going to have a blow up. We're going to have some hot dogs, and we're going to talk with people. We're going to play games and share a little bit about Jesus. That's all we got to do, okay? Sometimes we wait until we have to have this perfect, large, massive thing to do. We miss out on all the little things. And on this trip, we did little things that required zero resources, and we made a big difference. And so we have to be faithful and share the good news, okay? So we can't just come to church. We have to be the church. So I wonder, are we being the church, or are we just coming to church, right? When you read the early church, they had such great joy. They had people coming to Christ all the time because they were not just going to church, they were being the church. So are we doing that? And then look at your lives as individuals, because what is the church made of? People, right? So we speak of the church. I'm speaking to you. I'm speaking first to me as an individual. Are we being the church? Are you seeing those around you who need Christ? So I encourage you to pray this week, Lord, show me those around me who need Christ. Pay attention to people. If you're like me, I'm so busy focused on my problems, my life, my complaints. I don't think about others that they're going through stuff probably far worse than me. Are you outside of your comfort zone? Get outside of your comfort zone this week. Go do that. And then share the good news. Tell people what Christ has done in your life and point them to Jesus. Because we can't just come here and be church or go to church, we have to go and be the church. Let's pray. God, I thank you, Lord, for today. Thank you for the youth and their courage, Lord. I always think about when I was in a youth group, Lord, and I didn't have the courage to get up and share like they did. And so I'm just thankful for their witness, their encouragement to me, and let them to be an encouragement to this church. And it's not just the young people that are supposed to do this kind of stuff, Lord. We as those who are mature in the faith, those who have been adults and who've been in church a lot longer, we're to set the example for the youth, Lord. It seems like most of the times it's the other way around because we get comfortable and we just kind of just come to church. And we leave and do nothing with the gospel until we come back to church. So just show us, encourage us, Lord, challenge us, and let us step out today with a greater commitment to not just come to church, but to go and be the church. In Christ's name.